part three, getting free, you talk about, and this was very controversial for some people, I'm sure, it's all about sort of the religion of medicine. You know, we've all bought into this religion of medicine. And the most important thing that I took away from that I'd love for you to share with our viewers is just this persistent belief that it's not genetics, that I'm not cursed because my mother had cancer or my grandparents, whatever, that I have control. And of course, this whole science of epigenetics. But talk a little bit about sort of getting free and the biology of belief as well, right? All of this is just so critical, an ingredient to us getting through this rebirthing process.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we subscribe to this idea that we are born with faulty genes and it's just a matter of time until they manifest, and then we have to deal with it forever. And we look back on our, lineage and we can see, oh, well, my mom struggled with this, her mom struggled with it, my aunt did. So there must be something to that. And I think what we are now learning through what's often described as quantum biology is that there are factors that extend so far beyond what could ever be conveyed in the protein coding genes of our very limited genome, and all of the disappointment that came with the sequencing of the human genome and our recognition that we are scarcely more complex than an earthworm. So what else is going on here? How do I become this, right? What are my thoughts? What are my emotions? Like, how do I manifest out of the void, essentially, as this very unique being? And we're beginning to see, wow, there are kind of fields, right? Sometimes they're called morphic fields that are creating the possibility for new people to kind of like come into, right? So I came into a field that already existed in my family. Now, what did that field consist of? Well, certainly some biological elements, but it also consisted of responses to trauma, belief systems around, finances, belief systems around, education and pain and grief. And, there are learned behaviors, but it's, I think, even more than just a psychological transmission. Like, oh, my mom thought that way and she taught me, so now I know. And that's what we're actually finding is so mysterious, when it comes to inheritance, even biological inheritance, that there are inexplicably, at least thus far, or at least to me, means of transmitting stress signatures, for example, or trauma patterns, that really validate this concept that we are living with trauma and pain beyond what we have generated in our own lifetime. And so when you reckon with all of that, it's pretty daunting. But the incredible thing is that it's all up for evolution, right? So I am living proof of that. I had one belief system 10 plus years ago, and now I have another. If you look at a picture of me from 11 years ago and you look at a picture of me today, I practically look like a different human being, and that can't be explained through the expression of my genes. There's something else going on here. And what I find so interesting is that as people step into this mindset that resolves victimhood, that begins to find meaning in what otherwise was the, sort of random experience of being subjected to bad genes and bad timing and bad luck, as they begin to step into their own process of self care and self-love, they begin to radiate, literally. The people that I see and work with, they become radiant beings, and I don't think that's just figurative. So these are the kinds of mysteries that are being unpacked, I think, one lived experience at a time. And it has everything to do with what you can open up to. And I think it's very hard to open up to a belief system without a lived experience of it. And that's part of what, I've tried to create the conditions for, because otherwise you can enter into a lot of what's called spiritual bypassing, or attachment to these lofty concepts that sound really great, but then when the rubber hits the road, you don't live it, and then you judge yourself, and it becomes this kind of spiral of the old patterns just with like a new cloak on. So that's why this process of like shedding the old skin or rebirthing yourself does involve, it does involve some confrontation with areas of yourself that you might have wanted to run from, perhaps because they represent your ancestry and what your parents believed or what you were raised to believe. And now you see it doesn't fit you anymore. But that doesn't mean you have to reject that part of yourself. It just means you can hold it in a different priority, right? You can give it a little seat at the table, the kids' table over there.